A study published just 6 weeks ago in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition is making endocrinologists around the world question everything they thought they knew about blood sugar management. For over 40 years, doctors have been telling patients the same thing: switch from white bread to whole wheat. It's healthier. It's better for your blood sugar. It's what you should be eating. But this new research, involving over 12,000 participants aged 60 and older, revealed something that shocked even the researchers themselves. Whole wheat bread, the food sitting in nearly every health-conscious senior's kitchen right now, may be spiking your blood sugar almost as much as a candy bar. I'm Dr. Evelyn Moore. I've been practicing internal medicine for 27 years, and I specialize in metabolic health for patients over 60. And I have to tell you, when I first read this study, I went back and read it 3 more times because I couldn't believe what I was seeing. The data was clear, the methodology was solid, and the implications for your health are enormous. But here's what really concerns me. Right now, as you're watching this video, there are millions of seniors who wake up every morning, make themselves a nice, healthy breakfast with whole wheat toast, thinking they're doing the right thing, thinking they're protecting their heart, thinking they're managing their blood sugar, and they have no idea that this one food choice might be sabotaging everything else they're doing. Now, I'm going to tell you exactly what this study found, what you should be eating instead, and the specific numbers you need to know to protect yourself. But before I can do that, you need to understand why your body responds to food differently after 60 than it did when you were younger. Because once you understand that, everything else I'm about to share will make perfect sense. And trust me, this information could genuinely change your health trajectory for the rest of your life. To explain this properly, I need to tell you about a patient of mine named Margaret. Margaret came to see me 3 years ago. She was 67 years old, a retired school librarian, married to her husband George for 42 years. She had 2 grandchildren she adored, and her favorite thing in the world was taking them to the park every Saturday morning, and then making them pancakes afterward. Margaret was not what you'd call overweight. She was maybe 15 pounds heavier than she'd been in her 40s, but she was active. She walked 2 miles every morning with her neighbor. She did water aerobics twice a week at the community center. When Margaret sat down in my office that first day, she was frustrated. Not scared, not panicked, just frustrated. She told me her primary care doctor had recently diagnosed her with prediabetes. Her fasting blood sugar had come back at 118 milligrams per deciliter, and her A1C was 6.1%. Not terrible numbers, but definitely heading in the wrong direction. "Dr. Moore," she said, leaning forward in her chair, "I don't understand. I've been doing everything right. I switched to whole wheat bread years ago. I eat oatmeal for breakfast. I cut out soda completely. I use honey instead of sugar in my tea. What else am I supposed to do?" I asked Margaret to walk me through a typical day of eating. She was genuinely proud of her choices, and honestly, I could see why. On paper, her diet looked exemplary. Whole wheat toast with a little bit of margarine for breakfast, a turkey sandwich on whole grain bread for lunch, brown rice with dinner, an occasional whole wheat cracker with cheese as a snack. Do you see the pattern there? I asked Margaret if she'd ever tested her blood sugar after eating. She looked at me like I'd asked her to solve a calculus equation. Why would I do that? I'm eating healthy foods. So I gave Margaret a glucose monitor and asked her to do something simple. For the next 2 weeks, I wanted her to test her blood sugar before eating and then again 60 minutes after finishing each meal. Just write down the numbers and bring them back to me. 2 weeks later, Margaret was back in my office, and this time she wasn't frustrated. She was genuinely upset. "Dr. Moore, this can't be right," she said, pushing the paper across my desk. "Something must be wrong with the monitor." I looked at her numbers. After her healthy whole wheat toast breakfast, her blood sugar had spiked to 174. After her whole grain turkey sandwich at lunch, 168. That whole wheat cracker snack she thought was harmless, 152. "Margaret," I said gently, "the monitor isn't broken. This is what whole wheat is doing to your body." She stared at me for a long moment. "But everyone says whole wheat is healthy. My doctor told me to eat whole wheat. The Heart Association recommends it. It says so right on the package." And that, right there, is the tragedy of this situation. Margaret had done everything she was told. She had followed the conventional advice perfectly, and that advice was quietly, slowly, steadily pushing her toward full-blown type 2 diabetes. Over the next several months, I worked with Margaret to completely restructure her approach to carbohydrates. We didn't eliminate bread entirely, but we made strategic changes based on how her specific body responded. And within 8 months, her fasting blood sugar had dropped to 94. Her A1C came down to 5.4. She was no longer pre-diabetic. But here's what keeps me up at night. How many Margarets are out there right now? How many seniors are faithfully eating their whole wheat bread every single day, watching their blood sugar creep higher and higher, and having absolutely no idea that the food they trust is the food that's hurting them? Before I go any further, I want to hear from you. If you've ever been confused about what you're supposed to eat for blood sugar control, or if you've been told to eat whole wheat and you're not sure if it's working, drop a comment below and tell me your experience. I read every single comment, and I want to know what you're dealing with. Now let me explain why this happens. Because it's not random, and it's not some quirk of Margaret's body. There are specific biological reasons why whole wheat affects seniors differently, and once you understand them, you'll never look at that loaf of bread the same way again. The first thing you need to understand is something called the glycemic index. You've probably heard this term before, but most people don't really understand what it means. The glycemic index is simply a measure of how quickly a food raises your blood sugar after you eat it. Pure glucose, the fastest possible sugar, is assigned a value of 100. Everything else is compared to that. Now here's where things get interesting. White bread, the bread everyone knows is bad for blood sugar, has a glycemic index of around 75. That's high. That means it converts to sugar in your bloodstream very quickly. So what's the glycemic index of whole wheat bread? Most people guess it would be much lower, 40 maybe, or 50, something significantly better. The actual number? 74? That's right. Whole wheat bread has a glycemic index that is virtually identical to white bread. The difference is so small it's within the margin of error. Statistically speaking, they're the same. But wait, it gets worse. The glycemic index is measured in healthy young adults. And this is the second thing you need to understand. Your body's ability to process carbohydrates changes dramatically as you age. Think of your metabolism like a furnace. When you're young, that furnace is burning hot. You can throw almost any fuel in there and it burns up quickly and efficiently. But as you get older, that furnace starts to cool down. It doesn't burn as hot. It doesn't process fuel as efficiently. The same piece of wood that would have burned completely in a young furnace now smolders and leaves residue behind. In your body, that fuel is carbohydrates, and that residue is glucose sitting in your bloodstream. After age 60, most people experience a significant decline in what we call insulin sensitivity. Your cells become more resistant to insulin's signal. They don't open up and absorb glucose as readily as they used to. So even when your pancreas produces insulin, it doesn't work as effectively. This means that when a 67-year-old like Margaret eats whole wheat bread, her blood sugar spikes higher and stays elevated longer than it would have when she was 37. The exact same food. The exact same portion, completely different response. But there's a third factor that almost nobody talks about, and this one is crucial. It has to do with how whole wheat bread is actually made. You see, most people assume that whole wheat bread is made from intact wheat berries that are simply ground up a little less than white flour. They picture something rustic and natural, but that's not how modern commercial whole wheat bread is produced at all. In reality, commercial whole wheat flour is made by first completely separating the wheat kernel into its 3 components: the bran, the germ, and the endosperm. Then, for white flour, they use just the endosperm. For whole wheat flour, they recombine all 3 parts back together. Sounds like the same thing, right? It's not. When you mechanically separate and recombine these components, you fundamentally change the physical structure of the grain. The fiber that naturally surrounds and protects the starchy endosperm gets redistributed. It's no longer acting as a barrier that slows down digestion. It's just mixed in there, like adding some sawdust to sugar. The sugar still hits your bloodstream just as fast. This is why when researchers actually test blood sugar responses in real people eating real commercial whole wheat bread, they find virtually no difference compared to white bread. The marketing says healthy, the package says whole grain, but your bloodstream says sugar spike. Now here's the fourth piece of this puzzle, and this is the one that connects everything together. It's about what happens to your microbiome as you age. Your gut is home to trillions of bacteria, and these bacteria play a huge role in how you digest and process food. When you're young and healthy, you typically have a diverse population of bacteria that help break down fiber and produce beneficial compounds. But research has shown that after age 60, the gut microbiome changes significantly. You tend to lose diversity. You lose some of the bacterial strains that are best at processing complex carbohydrates. This means that the fiber in whole wheat bread, the fiber that's supposed to slow down digestion and prevent blood sugar spikes, your gut may not be processing it effectively anyway. It's like having a security system that's been unplugged. It's there, but it's not doing its job. So when you put all four of these factors together, virtually identical glycemic index, age-related insulin resistance, industrial processing that destroys the grain's natural structure, and microbiome changes that reduce fiber effectiveness, you begin to understand why whole wheat bread is not the health food seniors have been told it is. Now, let me share what that landmark study actually found, because the numbers are even more striking than what I've described so far. Researchers followed 12,400 adults over the age of 60 for an average of 7 years. They tracked dietary habits with detailed food diaries, measured metabolic markers every 6 months, and controlled for factors like exercise, medication use, and overall caloric intake. Here's what they discovered. Participants who consumed whole wheat bread as their primary bread choice, those who followed the standard advice, had fasting blood sugar levels that were on average 11 milligrams per deciliter, higher than participants who chose other bread alternatives. Their A1C levels were 0.3% higher. And most importantly, their risk of progressing from prediabetes to type 2 diabetes was 23% greater. 23%. That's not a small difference. That's not a statistical curiosity. That's a meaningful increase in disease risk directly attributable to a food that everyone thinks is healthy. The researchers were careful to note that this doesn't mean whole wheat bread is worse than white bread. Both are problematic. What it means is that switching from white to whole wheat, which is what millions of seniors have been told to do, provides essentially no protective benefit and may create a false sense of security that leads people to eat more of it. I think of it like switching from regular cigarettes to light cigarettes back in the 80s. People thought they were making a healthier choice. They felt good about it, but they were still smoking. The fundamental problem hadn't been addressed. Now let me tell you about 3 other patients who illustrate different aspects of this issue. The first is Robert, a 71-year-old retired engineer. Robert was a numbers guy. He loved data. When I first explained the glycemic index issue to him, he didn't believe me. He went home, bought 3 different glucose monitors to make sure he was getting accurate readings, and did his own experiment. He tested whole wheat bread, white bread, and sourdough bread made with the same flour. His whole wheat bread spiked him to 162. His white bread spiked him to 158. Virtually the same. But here's the interesting part. The sourdough? 124. Same flour, different process, dramatically different result. The fermentation process in real sourdough bread changes the structure of the carbohydrates and produces organic acids that slow down gastric emptying. Robert was so impressed by this finding that he started making his own sourdough at home. 6 months later, his A1C had dropped from 6.3 to 5.7. The second patient is Dorothy, 64, who came to me after her husband had a stroke. She was terrified of having one herself and wanted to do everything possible to protect her cardiovascular health. She'd been eating whole wheat bread religiously because the packaging said it was heart healthy. When I explained the blood sugar connection to cardiovascular disease, Dorothy was initially resistant. But it says heart healthy right on the package, she kept saying, so I showed her the research. Chronically elevated blood sugar damages blood vessels. It increases inflammation. It promotes plaque formation. The same mechanism that leads to diabetes also leads to heart disease. Dorothy made the switch away from whole wheat bread, focusing instead on lower glycemic alternatives and reducing her overall bread consumption. At her 6-month follow-up, her inflammatory markers had improved significantly. Her LDL cholesterol, which had been stubbornly elevated despite medication, dropped 12 points. The third patient is Arthur, 76. Arthur's story is a cautionary tale about what happens when this information comes too late. Arthur had been diabetic for 11 years when he first came to see me. He'd been diligently eating whole wheat bread that entire time, following his doctor's recommendations to the letter. When I looked at Arthur's records, I could see the trajectory. Despite medication, despite the healthy eating he thought he was doing, his blood sugar control had gotten progressively worse over the years. He was now on 3 different diabetes medications and was being told he might need to start insulin. We made changes to Arthur's diet, including eliminating whole wheat bread. His numbers improved, but the damage of 11 years couldn't be fully undone. He was able to reduce 1 medication, but still needs the other 2. Every time I see Arthur, I wonder how different his situation might be if he'd had this information a decade earlier. I want to pause here and ask you something. Do you currently eat whole wheat bread because you believe it's healthier, or do you have a family member who does? Tell me in the comments below. Share this video with them, because this information could genuinely change their health trajectory. Now let me give you a clear, actionable protocol for what to do with this information, because knowledge without action is just trivia. Step 1. For the next 2 weeks, I want you to test your personal response to whole wheat bread. You can buy an inexpensive glucose monitor at any pharmacy. Test your blood sugar before eating and again 60 minutes after finishing your meal. Write down the numbers. Do this at least 5 times with whole wheat bread. Then you'll have your data, not population averages, your body's response. Step 2. Based on what you find, consider these alternatives. Real sourdough bread, made with actual fermentation, not just sourdough flavoring, typically produces lower blood sugar responses. The longer the fermentation, the better. Look for artisan bakeries or learn to make your own. Sprouted grain breads are another option. The sprouting process changes the carbohydrate structure and may reduce the glycemic impact. Look for brands that specifically say sprouted on the label. Rye bread, particularly dark rye or pumpernickel, made with coarse rye flour, often has a lower glycemic impact than wheat-based breads. Step 3. Consider reducing your overall bread consumption regardless of the type. I know this is harder to hear, but the truth is that for many seniors, especially those already dealing with blood sugar issues, bread of any kind may not be the best choice for regular consumption. There are plenty of satisfying alternatives. Lettuce wraps, portobello mushroom caps, cloud bread made from eggs, even just eating your sandwich fillings with a fork. Step 4. Talk to your doctor about your findings. Bring your glucose readings. Show them the data. A good physician will appreciate that you're taking an active role in understanding your health. Ask specifically about your carbohydrate tolerance and whether your current dietary recommendations need to be updated based on your personal response. Step 5. Pay attention to the whole picture. Bread is just one piece of the puzzle. Other foods that are marketed as healthy but may spike blood sugar in seniors include instant oatmeal, which is often loaded with sugar and highly processed. Fruit juice, which concentrates the sugar while removing the fiber. Granola, which is typically very high in sugar despite its healthy image. And even some whole grain cereals that sound healthy but are rapidly digested. Step 6. Watch for these warning signs that your blood sugar management needs attention. Increased thirst and frequent urination. Fatigue, especially after meals. Blurred vision that comes and goes. Slow healing of cuts or bruises. Numbness or tingling in your hands or feet. If you're experiencing any of these, please see your doctor promptly. Now, I want to be very clear about something important. I am not telling you to never eat bread again. I am not saying whole wheat bread is poison. and I am absolutely not saying you should ignore your doctor's advice. What I am saying is that the blanket recommendation to switch to whole wheat bread as a way to manage blood sugar is based on outdated science and doesn't account for individual variation, age-related changes, or the realities of modern food processing. You deserve to have accurate information so you can make truly informed choices. If there's one thing I've learned in 27 years of practice, it's that health is personal. What works for one person may not work for another. The only way to know what works for your body is to measure, test, and observe. Margaret, the patient I told you about at the beginning of this video, comes to see me once a year now for a checkup. Her blood sugar has remained in the healthy range for 3 years. Her grandchildren still come over on Saturdays, but now instead of pancakes, she makes them eggs with vegetables and a small piece of the sourdough bread she bakes herself. They love it just as much, and more importantly, she's going to be around to make many more Saturday breakfasts for years to come. That's what I want for you too. Before I go, let me summarize the key points. Whole wheat bread has nearly the same glycemic index as white bread. After age 60, your body processes carbohydrates less efficiently due to insulin resistance, microbiome changes, and metabolic slowing. The study of over 12,000 seniors showed that whole wheat bread consumption was associated with higher blood sugar levels and increased diabetes risk. Testing your personal response is the only way to know how your body reacts. Alternatives like sourdough, sprouted grain, or reducing bread consumption altogether may be better choices for blood sugar management. Please remember that this information is for educational purposes. It's not a substitute for personalized medical advice from your own healthcare provider. Always consult with your doctor before making significant changes to your diet, especially if you're taking medications for diabetes or other conditions. If this video helped you understand something new about your health, please do me a favor. Hit that like button. It really does help more people find this information. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and click the bell icon so you don't miss future videos. And most importantly, share this video with someone you love who might benefit from hearing it. Your spouse, your siblings, your friends at church or the community center. Everyone over 60 deserves to know this. In my next video, I'm going to share the breakfast that actually does help control blood sugar, the one I recommend to almost all my patients over 60. The results people have seen with this simple morning routine have been remarkable, so make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss it. Thank you for spending this time with me today. Thank you for caring about your health enough to seek out information, and thank you for trusting me to share it with you. I'll see you in the next video. Take care of yourself.